But you have raised concerns in your role on Homeland Security about the implementation of some of the promises Donald Trump made on the campaign trail. His mass deportation vow is very popular. Our CBS polling shows 57% of voters like the idea, but our CBS polling shows 57% of voters like the idea, but how it is implemented matters a lot to voters. The vast majority prefer that federal law enforcement or immigration agencies carry them out. Just 40% say the U.S. military should be involved. The stated Trump plan is to use the military assets, deputize the National Guard, and have them act as immigration agents. Do you believe that is lawful?
You know, I'm 100% supportive of going after the 15,000 murderers, the 13,000 sexual assault perpetrators, rapists, all these people. Let's send them on their way to prison or back home to another prison. So I would say all points bulletin, all in. But you don't do it with the Army because it's illegal. We've had a distrust of putting the Army into our streets because the police have a difficult job, but the police understand the Fourth Amendment. They have to go to judges. They have to get warrants. It has to be specific. And so I'm for removing these people, but I would do it through the normal process of domestic policing. Now, I would say that the mayor of Denver, if he's going to resist federal law, which there's a long-standing history of the supremacy of federal law, if he's going to resist that, it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I would suspect that he would be removed from office. I don't know whether or not there'd be a criminal prosecution for someone resisting federal law, but he will lose. And people need to realize that what he is offering is a form of insurrection where the states resist the federal government. Most people objected to that and rejected that long ago. So I think the mayor of Denver is on the wrong side of history, and really I think will face legal ramifications if he doesn't obey the federal law.
Just in context on those numbers you rattled off in terms of criminals, those numbers from ICE are accurate figures, but they're over a 40-year period of time. What we know now about the immigration authorities who would have to be charged with rounding these individuals up, there are just 6,000 agents, 41,000 detention beds to carry out the assignment of rounding up millions of undocumented people potentially. How do you suggest they implement it? And if this is a red line for you in terms of using the military, would you vote no on the DHS secretary, Kristi Noem?
I will not support and will not vote to use the military in our cities. I think it's a terrible image. But I will tell you, but just in the last week, with the belief that a new administration will change things, there were 4 or 5 criminals arrested in the last week. And what would happen, and I think what will happen under Donald Trump's administration, is I don't recommend to use the Army, but I would use the FBI, I would use ICE, I would use Border Patrol. And they have a list now of 15,000. I don't care if it came in over 40 years or 10 years. Mm-hmm. If you've got a list, you put these people on a all points bulletin. These are the kind of people that are dangerous and that everybody needs to be the watch on. And they would go out and seek those people. We have about 30,000 very dangerous people already convicted of crimes. That should be the first priority for all of us. Let's go find those people. But it's not about detaining them. In all likelihood, they should be going to a jail, either a jail here or in the country they came from. So I think if we did that, there'll be a lot of unity. If they send the Army into New York and you have 10,000 troops marching, carrying semi-automatic weapons, I think it's a terrible image and I will oppose that. But it's not that I oppose removing people. I just object to what has been against the law for over 100 years, and that's using the Army.
But deputizing the National Guard, that specifically is the proposal. You also oppose that.
I don't think it's the best way to do it. It's less clear whether that's legal or illegal. Typically, it has to be done at the behest of the governors. I still don't like a militarization of police, whether it's National Guard or Army. I think there's a lot of FBI. Okay. There's a lot of Border Patrol agents. There's a better way to do it, and it needs to be individualized. That doesn't mean I'm any less serious about getting it done. It just needs to be done according to the law and consistent with our traditions.
Understood. You've made clear you are a fiscal conservative. I'm going to ask you about the choice just made to select hedge fund manager Scott Bessent as the Treasury Secretary. He had a long financial career. He served as the chief investment officer for George Soros's funds. He's been a political donor. Elon Musk came out publicly against him, calling him business as usual. Do you favor Mr. Bessent in the role as Treasury Secretary?
You know, I've heard good things about him. I haven't made a decision. I lean towards being supportive. I don't like tariffs, but then again, I don't like the president promoting tariffs. I think tariffs are a tax on the consumer, and they ignore things like with steel. There are 80 workers working in steel buying industry for every worker making steel. So yeah, you can protect certain industries, but it's at the expense of other people. I don't believe that'll be enough for me to want to vote against Bessent, because it's also the president's position as well. I will be vocal in saying that I think tariffs are bad and that international trade actually saves every consumer about $7,000 a year. So everybody in our country is $7,000 richer because of international trade. It's part of one of the booms of post-war and post-industrial revolution. This amazing international trade has made us all richer, and we need to talk about the statistics and facts concerning the benefits of trade.
Understood on the nuances and specifics there. But that is primarily how Donald Trump is promising to pay for all the things he promised on the campaign trail. As you know, the federal debt is past $36 trillion as of this week. His proposals to lift taxes off of tips, overtime, Medicare, Social Security, give tax credits, that could add as much as $8 trillion more to the deficit, according to the Committee for a Responsible Budget. Do you actually expect Republicans to take up these proposals?
You know, in 2017, I voted for a tax reduction package that they said would add to the debt. But I also forced my colleagues to vote for pay-as-you-go. It's a policy that's in our law, and they have to waive it, which means that if a tax cut causes a reduction and it causes an increase in the debt because of reduced revenue, that you have to have spending cuts. So I've always been in favor of the tax cuts, but I've also been in favor of the spending cuts. The same will occur with this. If we do cut taxes, which I think helps the economy, you leave money in the hands of the productive private sector. I think that's a good idea. But if you do it, I would cut spending, and there will be procedural blockade or procedural votes that I will force that says that we should also cut spending as well.
Our polling shows that the vast majority of Americans, 86%, prefer people with experience running the agencies. And 64% polled by us think it's important to appoint people with that experience in Washington. Given that, for example, the Pentagon pick hasn't ever managed a large corporation or held a high rank in the military, do you think he can run the Pentagon?
Yes, and I think the vast majority of people, if you poll them, will say that they don't think people should be picked based on religion or gender or sexuality. They want people to be picked on merit. And one of Pete Hegseth's criticisms of our Pentagon is that we've gone away from merit and gone more towards racial characteristics. And so I think that the people are and would be overwhelmingly in favor of someone who's going to base hiring on merit, not on racial characteristics.